So, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Project Purpose Podcast. Today, we're once again joined by our beloved and expert clinical and forensic psychologist, Miss Dawn Petgrave Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me again.
Awesome. You know, we love having you. And today's a special topic. I cannot wait for us to dive into it and to get your expertise on this well needed subject. Today, we're talking about how our childhood shapes who we become, right?
Mhm.
And how we can also focus on healing from the inside out. And I want to go ahead and get right into it, Dawn, with your expertise. First and foremost, what are adverse childhood experiences, and how do they impact long-term mental health?
All right, thank you for the question. So, adverse childhood experiences are obviously adverse experiences that children would have had in their early years. The assessment itself is a 10 question tools, and it covers physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, a household member with mental illness, an incarcerated household member, a mother treated violently, substance abuse in the household, and parental separation, whether it's by divorce or death. So those are the areas that we identify under the assessment. And we will talk about the statistics later, but I don't think we understand how prevalent ACEs are. Not just in Jamaica. I'm in Jamaica, you're in the US, but globally. So we're going to look at some of the global statistics, and then I definitely want to single out some of the statistics for Jamaica because it's overwhelming.
Wow. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Side note, my hubby and I actually watched a movie last night, and believe it or not, that was the experience that the movie is called Betrayal. um
Hmm.
if someone wants to look it up, but it was really about kids, three boys, being physically abused by their father. And it was the three boys plus their mother. And the mom, of course, women, we play such amazing role. So she was going through the abuse because she wanted to be strong for her boys, and she did not want to break up the family.
Family.
But in the end, as the boys become young men, you should see how that unhealed trauma plays out. And I'm not going to go further into that, but it just bring home how real adverse childhood experiences are, and how we should really start talking about it and start seeking out ways to minimize it and eventually to delete it. So many adults are walking around, as we just
Hmm.
mentioned, with
Hmm.
unhealed wounds from their childhood. In your experience, what are the most common ways that childhood trauma shows up in adulthood? Whether it's, the fact that people will still tell us that you should move on, but what are some of the ways that it still shows up?
All right. So for me personally, for the persons that I've worked with, most of the time is anger and anxiety. So mostly anger for men and anxiety for women, though it can be for both. But most of the time, if we should differentiate, that's how we see it. When we have anger, we have depression, we have self-harm. So sometimes you wonder why people cut or, they do these things to their bodies, and you wonder, but those are a part of, traumas that were never healed. Relationship difficulties, fear of commitment, lack of intimacy. You don't want to get too close to anybody. You're very hyper vigilant. Substance abuse.
Yeah.
We see this mostly for men. When you really do their history, the substance abuse is just a coping mechanism from the traumas that they were never healed from, self-destructive behaviors, and then physical symptoms. Because the thing with ACEs is that you have a more prevalence of developing physical illnesses, not just mental illnesses. And even just to piggyback on the movie that you spoke about earlier, just to bring this home, because somebody may not see the movie, but everybody know Will Smith, right? Everybody know Will Smith, and everybody knew about the Will Smith Chris Rock scenario. And in Will's book, Will spoke about his most vivid memory being a night his father struck down his mom and he did nothing about it. And so, though he was a child, and especially for boy children, it is aces are harder for them when they see their mothers being abused because they feel helpless. And so sometimes they grow up being coward. So Will explain in his book, and this is something I would definitely encourage everybody to go get. Um, he explained how all his life he was a coward. He was a coward. And so he developed this Will Smith player, pretty boy attitude just so people would not see how coward he was. And I mean, not to go further in it, but now we can see the correlation between um, his experiences early in life and what happened with Chris Rock. I can guarantee. I remember watching it, and I remember saying he didn't punch Chris Rock. He punched somebody else. Chris Rock just happened to get it, and the person I was talking to couldn't understand what I was saying. But that was a retaliation of no more. So I didn't protect my mother. I didn't protect my mother, but now I'm going to protect my wife. And so again, we see aces showing up in situations like those.
Wow, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that example, powerful example. And yes, I am aware of that book, and I'm definitely going to look into
Yeah.
getting it and reading it. Um, Now, I think you covered this a little bit in what you just mentioned, but give us some examples of how unresolved trauma from childhood impact persons' relationships, career, and even our parenting styles.
Yeah. So let me start with parenting style, if that's okay with you. No, it's like a mother who might have been molested as a little girl or who might have been raped. And now she's the mother of a daughter. She may protect her son, but if she now has a daughter, most of the time they become overprotective. So then they ruin the social development for their children now because now they are overprotective, right? Or you have the flip side. You have those parents that ill treat the children, have no form of intimacy with them, no form of spending time with them because I didn't get it. So I nobody loved me. Nobody loved me. I didn't get any help. So if a child may say, "Mommy, can you sit and watch TV with me?" Nobody watched TV with me when I was growing up, so suck it up. So, you may either see persons just difficulty trusting, forming attachment, relationship challenges, just don't know how to speak to anybody. They're in and out of relationships, or get this, depending on what their aces are. So let's say a parent left. You may find this individual being so afraid of commitment because every time they get close to someone committing to them, they self-sabotage because they fear abandonment. This person is going to up and leave again. So the minute they start getting too close, they will self-sabotage, find a way to end that relationship or just ruin the relationship so the person have to end it. All right. Individual may struggle to regulate their emotions. Now we talk about emotional intelligence on some of the previous sessions that we have done together. We've also spoke about emotional agility. So, and I like to bring um, examples so people really get it when they're watching and when they're listening. So, what do we mean by regulate your emotion? So, let's say you had a near hit. You're driving, and you had a near hit. You almost run into somebody's back, right? But so your heart rate may race up, and your palms may get sweaty, and you may even start trembling. But it didn't happen. So eventually, you sat back and you go, and then your heart rate regulate. Okay. Just think about somebody who is living in that heightened state all the time, Sheyrll, all the time. So they're always on the edge. The least little thing some persons would say, oh, my head chip. The least little thing aggravates them. So they're always irritable, never seem to have no form of peace at all in their lives. So communicating effectively, they may just don't know how to communicate because that was not a blueprint for them. And sometimes communication becomes, what's the word I'm looking for? Confusing. So, for example, let's say you have a 2-year-old. We call it the turbo two or the tantrums, right? So you have a 2-year-old and the mother, or let's use 3 years old, and you're going to daycare. First day of daycare for the child may be overwhelming. So you're leaving your mom, your safety net, your caregiver, someone that you know, and now you're going into a space where it's new faces. That child is gonna cry, they're gonna do all sorts of things. Probably don't even talk for the entire day. But guess what? At the end of the day, the parent come, lifts them up, hugs them, spend time with them, they become regulated again. So now that child is now learning that, oh, she leaves, but she comes back. It's okay. I'm still safe. All right. So when you have a situation where the child is just left, the child is crying, there's no hugs, there's no lift up, there's none of that. It's confusing because now we're also telling this child that you're not worthy of my time, nobody loves you. And this is why we see so many adults with low self-esteem and low self-worth, because that was never exemplified to them in their younger days.
Wow. Yes, very, very powerful. And again, if you're just joining us, we're talking about how childhood shapes who we become and really understanding the early traumas that might affect us and how we, play them out, how we portray them as adults. Now, Dawn, I know that you work in both the clinical and the forensic settings in psychology.
Mm.
Share with us, how do you see unhealed childhood trauma playing a role either in the criminal behavior or, cycles of harm?
Man, well, obviously they're in jail, right? Um, I was looking for this thing. I did it for a class when I was doing my forensic degree, and I just could not find it for the love of God. But I researched who is the typical prisoner, who's the typical prisoner in Jamaica. And just from memory, most of the time, they have never had a relationship with the father. They come from broken homes. They drop out of school, and the list goes on and on. So when you think about the typical prisoner, that person is someone who have experienced at least four aces, at least four aces. Now, earlier we talked about some of the behaviors, because remember, you always hear me say this, the brain is not fully developed until age 25. Most of the time, aces happen between, let's say, birth to about 17 years old. Far from 25. We're still 5 years away from 25, or however many. I'm not a math expert, right? But we see that happening. And so let's break this down. There was, again, I'm a reader, the book Righting My Wrongs. And the author is Shaka Senghor. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but Righting My Wrongs, Shaka Senghor. Here's how his story started. Shaka was a bright boy and he wanted to become a medical doctor. So he was at the top of his class. And then when he hit, I think, grade 5, his parents started fighting a lot. And now he started becoming very afraid. And so he would lock away in his room, yada, yada, yada. Progressing, they eventually separated and the dad moved out. Now, remember what he knows. is both parents together. This has been his norm. Now something have shaken up for him, and he does not know how to articulate what he is experiencing and what he's feeling. So now he starts acting out in school. So now those grades start dropping, and then he was not seeing his father anymore. His father was his friend. Now he's not seeing his father anymore. Those are all aces. You realize how many aces. So now he's not feeling loved anymore. He's dealing with abandonment until eventually he started skipping classes. Right now, he started skipping classes, hanging with the boys on the street. What do you think happened next? Somebody introduced him to selling, the hustling, right? And then at 17 years old, while he's out there hustling, he got shot. Thank God he didn't die, but he eventually dropped out of school. Here, what happened? He went and got himself a gun because now nobody is gonna shoot me and get away with it. And it would so happen that one night on one of his rounds, a man tried robbing him of his drugs, took the drugs and didn't want to pay him. One shot, he killed the man, got life in prison at 19 years old. The
Wow.
same little boy who was en route to becoming a medical doctor. So when I speak passionately about this, especially rehabilitation for the prison system, is you do the crime, yes, do the time, but in doing the time, how do we rehabilitate the mind? How do we get to the root of what caused this person to be here, right? Recently, I was talking to an inmate. I work, I sit on the board for the prison, and so I do monthly visits. And I was talking to an inmate, and he says to me, Miss Petgrave, that thing you talk about as a child? He said, Miss Petgrave, my mother always tell me how nothing black is good. And so black meaning not the race, because we're Jamaican, so we're black, but black meaning the color, the shade of his skin. And so she would always run him and, go away. You're stupid or you won't become anything. And he's explaining to me that he grew up with so much anger. Now, you're not gonna want to hit your mom. You're not gonna want to hurt your mom. But most of the time, no, we see the anger being taken out in rape or domestic violence or all these things. So those are just some of the ways that we see childhood trauma going over into adulthood and how it affects how it affects crime, which is a whole different study right there. 99.99% of persons who have broken the law have gone through at least one ACEs.
Wow. Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that with us. So sad, but so real. And I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you're here to talk about it with us. Um, Now, do you think that someone who grew up in a good home, so to speak, can still experience trauma that affects them in adulthood?
Definitely, definitely. So let's define good home, right? I think when we are talking about good home, we're probably saying a nice house, parents working, you have food, you have running water, you have all these things. But those are not the things that define your growth and development. They're a part of it and they help, but most importantly is the socialization with that child and that parent. So let's say you have a child who both parents work. So the child has everything, the latest iPhone, the latest sneakers, the latest this, the latest that. But the parents are never there. Now we're dealing with the issue of abandonment. We're dealing with the issue of I don't feel loved because they're never here. Children spell love Time. So we'll hear a lot of parents, especially the fathers, and we're not knocking fathers, let me just throw that out there, but we'll hear the father say, well, I've got to work to put food on the table. But put the food on the table and you could still lose that child. And then, Sheyrll, you can have a household where there's barely ever any food, But you have parents who spend time with their children. I mean, I could talk about my childhood. You know what I mean? I mean, our dad left. I remember I was 11 years old. I was in high school. I was 11 years old. Mom at the time had five of us and was a young woman. But what did we do? We had so much love, all the music around us. So because she was always there, and we felt that love. I remember, and I've never even spoken about this experience, but I remember one evening coming home from school. And when I got home, Auntie Sonia was there. I don't know if you remember Auntie Sonia. Auntie Sonia was there. She came up from town, come to the country, and Auntie Sonia was there. So Mom and Auntie Sonia was on the veranda. I was so excited to see Auntie Sonia. So in running to go, hug Auntie Sonia, I fell. And you know, them said, buck off your toe, tore off my big toe, right? And mommy started crying. So I'm like, why is she crying? It's my foot. But here's what came out of her mouth next. I don't even have any dinner. And now she go back off her toe. I will never forget that memory because it shows a level of love that words could not even express. And so, though we didn't have what the world would probably call a good home, we didn't own our home growing up. We barely had food. I mean, we went to school probably 3 days out of the week. But guess what? Look at the love that we grew up with. And so I want persons to understand that it is how the child is socialized. It is the nurturing. It is okay. You're having a bad day. It's okay. Let's talk about it. It's that support system that is there. And then here's the flip side also. And with money, when children just grow up in a lot of money, if you have a nanny who does everything for you, if you have if you have somebody always doing something for you, it cripples you now as adult. So you don't know how to make intelligent decisions most of the time, well, unless you recognize that and you start doing some self-development and so forth. All right. But yes, people can grow up in a quote unquote good home and suffer more cases than someone who has not. What about parents who, they're rich and they have money, but they do drugs? And the child is around that. What about growing up with a mother who's depressed? It's something that also affects a child. Oh, and let me just give you a punchline right here. Trauma begins in the womb. Trauma begins in the womb. And so, let's say we have a woman who is depressed or is going through domestic violence and she's pregnant. You best know that all of what you are feeling, your emotions, all that thing has the ability to affect your unborn child. And this is why parenting is so important. And most of the world majority of the world's problem can be linked back to parenting.
Wow. Yes. Very powerful. Very powerful. And yes, thank you for reminding us. Yes, it's not just, the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old, but literally it's from, being
Birth, yeah.
unborn, from, yeah, being in the womb, and how that mother is coping and dealing with life at the moment while she is, developing you. So
Right,
thank you for
right.
sharing. And I also love the story that you took us back to your childhood, making us really understand and bringing home the point that, yes, sometimes on the outside, we might see the house on the big hill, on the hill, the big house on the
The
hill,
big house on the hill.
not the big hill, but the big house on the hill, right? The long driveway, the mysterious home, and the cars, and like you said, the helpers all around. And we might think on the outside that, wow, that is the good life. They're probably so happy, so cared for. But yes, on the inside, as you mentioned, is how we're being socialized and how we're being nurtured that truly helps a child to develop into a sustainable adult. So thank you for bringing that home for us as well. Now, what do you think about, shame and silence? As an adult, someone who have been through ACEs, and instead of seeking help, they cover it. They're ashamed, so they don't talk about it. But in essence, that also prolong the suffering of
Yes.
that ACEs. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. And Lisa Nichols, I think we spoke about her in the last podcast we did together. Lisa Nichols said you have to be a part of your own rescue. And you have to be a part of your own rescue, really. So, unfortunately, when it comes to trauma, it's easier said than done. So, somebody will look at, let's say, a woman in an abusive relationship and say, well, why doesn't she just leave? It's not that easy. It's not that easy. What I will say to that individual is that remember that you're the victim and not the perpetrator. So a lot of time, people tend to blame themselves. The victim blame themselves for their traumas. Let's use sexual traumas. The statistics in Jamaica, or maybe worldwide too, only 1 in 10 cases are being reported. Only 1 in 10 cases are being reported. And so again, when you talk to the victims, you hear, I was afraid, I thought it was my fault, or I don't want to break up the family, especially with child sexual abuse. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I didn't think anybody would believe me. And most of the time they're threatened. Most of the time the perpetrator threatens them, right? And so they're fearful. But what I would say is when you start talking, you free yourself. When you start talking, you free yourself. When you start journaling, you free yourself because at least it becomes an outlet to get that outside of you. And there should not be any shame. I want to make this point clear because I've had my own stories and I've had my own challenges, and the one thing I've had to teach myself every day is that would you rather your healing, even if it comes with some criticism, or would you rather to suffer and die? And I preferred my healing because I also felt like my story was a part of my purpose. And now it's been evident now, right? Because the way I can speak passionately and all these areas of life is because I don't necessarily experience all of them myself, but it's in my circle, it's close, so I can speak on them. And so we also need to move away from being so easy to criticize someone because you don't know what they're carrying. You don't know what they went through last night and still get up and show up. I remember in an interview one time with the Beyond Woman magazine, um, she asked me a question. How is it that as a woman in ministry, in church ministry, you teach people to do makeup? Isn't that teaching them how to cover their pain, or and it was a valid question, still is a very valid question today. But here what that was for me. What that was is that makeup is instant. So you put some pink lipstick on, you see it right away. And the reason I get up and do what I do every day is because I get the story. So I started out in makeup 1998, which is what led me to psychology. Because Sheyrll, I was getting so many women just pouring out when I'm doing their faces. And what about the woman who got beaten up last night, but you can't leave yet? You don't have the resources to leave yet, but you need to go on that job interview. The makeup is instant. And if I can show you how to put on a little bit of concealer and put some powder over it so that you can gain the strength and confidence you need to still go out and get that job interview so that you can now make an income to better your children, then, definitely, I will definitely continue to do that. The point I'm trying to make is that it may come with shame when you start sharing your story. people are going to have a lot to say. But the longer you hold that inside, is the more you are creating dis-ease in your body, which turn to disease. And I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza or one of those neuroscientists, or that says that every every disease begins with a thought. Think about that, Sheyrll. Every disease begins with a thought. And here's the other thing: we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind. The only role of the subconscious mind is to put form to whatever you constantly feed it. Again, Joe Dispenza says that anywhere you put your attention is where you put your energy. So if you get up every day and all you're thinking about are the adversities that happen to you, and you replay them, you are re-traumatizing yourself every day. So this is why you stay in a state of always surviving. If you're surviving, you can't create, you can't be your best self. And you are attracting more traumas to you because that's where you're vibrating. So this is why you will see, let's say, a woman who was raped, you will hear that she has been raped multiple times after that, right? Or you'll hear a woman who got out of an abusive relationship. She finds herself in another one and another one and another one because you're still on the same frequency. All right. So if it takes some shame for you to get your healing, deal with the shame, but get your healing, because the longer that you're in your girl, devil is a liar.
Are you able to log back in?
Yeah.
All right, I'm still recording, so it's fine.
Oh boy.
It's all right. Luckily, we have editing.
I
All right.
know.
So
I
so
know.
I didn't stop it. So we're still recording. You were just on a roll. I thought, but I think we missed the end of that statement. I'm not sure if you remember that. You can just make that point, and then we're gonna obviously, cut out what
Some of
that was.
it.
But so you ready
Girl,
to
I don't
start? This
remember
is
what I was saying. Tell me what I was saying again. Just
well, we were talking about, the shame and the silence of protecting the trauma, and how people prolong it. So you did mention things like, the late. You were right at the point where you were saying the one that might experience physical abuse will continue to experience physical abuse. I think you could actually pick up right there, because this is where we're gonna cut it. And when
Right.
I'm going to say welcome back, we apologize for that difficulty there. But our Dawn was just talking about the how we can prolong our suffering, and you just kind of
Right.
wrap it up, and then we're going to move into healing, and then we're almost at the end. Okay.
Okay. No problem. All right. um, so the longer you hold on to your trauma is the more power you're given to your perpetrator, because most of the time the trauma is linked to someone else. If it's abandonment, it's linked to a parent. You grew up with anger towards a parent, so one of my encouragement has always been, before you can get your own healing, you have to talk through this, get the necessary help, and learn to forgive. And I'm very careful when I talk about forgiveness, because when somebody has been badly traumatized, who dare you tell them to forgive the person who have caused them that trauma, right? But forgiveness is not for the person. Forgiveness is for you. And there's a quote that I read. It says, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. Fortunately, if you're drinking poison, you're going to die. So we see that a lot of people block their own growth and their own development. When you talk about sicknesses in the body, which is another thing that ACEs does, it creates sicknesses in the body. So sometimes people develop ulcers because they're holding on to so much bitterness and anger and fear, right? That they can't have no peace of mind, no peace in their body. And so forget about the shame, because you didn't do this to yourself. The most important thing is to get your healing. And if getting your healing is going to cause some shame, then so what? You need to be a part of your own rescue.
Yes, excellent, excellent. And again, if you're just joining us, we are talking about how childhood shapes who we become. And we are here with a licensed psychologist, Miss Dawn Petgrave Smith, who shared with us that exactly what ACEs is, adverse childhood experiences, and also the habits that we see, that we carry around, the impact of ACEs when it's not resolved. And now we're going to segment into healing, right? Into not just talking about the topic, but share tips and strategies on how individuals can heal from this experience. So tell us, Dawn, where does the healing begin for someone who's ready to face their past?
Healing is hard and healing hurts. So a lot of time people don't get their healing because they're afraid of the pain that comes with healing. So it begins with recognizing that I need help. I need help. And then because you need help, you seek out the right solutions for you. So of course, my first solution is always going to be to work with a professional therapist. Okay, someone who can do the necessary assessments and to help you to get where you need to go. But let's say, person don't have money, they don't have access. The best thing that you can do for yourself is self-reflect. Start facing these emotions. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling like this? What are my triggers, right? What are my triggers? And also, we can start journaling our experiences. We can also, this is the big one, there's a thing called forgiveness therapy worksheet that I do with my clients. And it's really, really going through the stages of forgiveness and letting go the ill that you're holding towards the person that has done the act. And if somebody's just joining and hear this part, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. I'm not saying it's not unfair. But what I'm saying is there has to be a reason why the Bible speaks so much about forgiveness. It's like God knew that people are going to do things to us all the time that we need forgiveness for, and that we ourselves will need forgiveness. Now, some persons blame themselves. And so you have to start by forgiving yourself. and looking yourself in the mirror and say, Dawn, I am sorry. Dawn, I am proud of you. Like, get to that place where you're doing self-love. And if you've missed the self-love series, definitely go back and watch the self-love series, because a lot of times when you start loving on yourself, you recognize how much more worthy you are, how much more worthy you are of an amazing life, worthy of peace, worthy of success. But bitterness and resentment is going to block that. No, so that's on the individual level. Let's talk parenting, Sheyrll. So ACEs can be um, reversed when persons start to nurture differently. So, for example, and I'll use my dad or dad. Okay. I mean, for years through high school, I think I carried so much pain because I put everything that was happening on him. He wasn't there, that's why we didn't have food. He wasn't there, that's why we, you know what I mean? Everything was. But when I became a Christian, the first thing that I wanted to do was to forgive my dad. And so I realized that when I moved to America, and we reconnected, I became very intentional in having a relationship with him. And I recognized that he was different now. He was nurturing differently because now he understood what I need. So that worked for me. And then God bless his soul, all of us were able to reunite and have an amazing relationship before he passed away. So let's talk about a mother who might have moved away to another country while the children were young to make life better. These children that are in Jamaica, um, they don't care about all the glitz and glam and all this stuff. But mommy left me for how much years I'm in a CR. What a mother can do now is start by, even if it's an adult child, start by apologizing. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I wasn't there for those years, and I know I can't go back and make it up. But how about we start by doing an activity together? I don't know. How about you come over every Sunday? What about, you know what I mean? You start the nurturing, because remember, the ill behaviors or thoughts are developed when the person going through the trauma did not come back to a place of equilibrium. So they remain heightened. All right. So, and for me, I just believe that love is a transmitter. The Bible speaks about love covers a multitude of sin. And I recognize that when you love you, it frees you to love others. And it also frees others to love you. Because most of the time, because we have never experienced that, we block that because we don't know what to do with it when it comes to us. Shift the focus of individual to community. We need everybody. We need churches to be telling little boys and little girls that they're smart and that they're beautiful and that they're loving and that they're worthy. Right? We need schools to be reinforcing this. Reduce the stigma. Earlier, you asked the question about shame. Let's remove the stigma. Sheyrll, one year I was teaching at a church camp, and a young lady asked if she could say something, and I gave her the opportunity. I had no clue what she was going to say. She came up. At the time, she was 37. She was a mother of five and two grandchildren. Just do the maths. It's just unbelievable. But here's what hit me. She said, I know today I have family members here, and some of them are going to be so mad, but 3 of my 5 pregnancies are from rape. And she walked around with that until she was 37 years old. I would have just happened to be teaching a class and something triggered. Sheyrll, I was not ready for what came after. I'm talking about this and I swear I'm tearing up right now. I was not ready for what came after. She opened up the door to so many people wanted to know, come and share that they too have been raped or they too have been molested. But they kept their mouth. And when you ask them, why didn't you say something? Um, it's almost you know together, everybody, I was afraid. I was afraid. So sometimes we beat up on the parents, and so that parent didn't know that was going on, or they didn't know that. No, no, because the victim is afraid. And so loving on yourself, but start the conversation. Give yourself the freedom to talk about what happened to you. In psychology, Oprah Winfrey and oh God, I forgot the doctor that that did a book. What happened to you? So now, what we're pushing more in psychology is not trying to probe, and we're asking people, okay, Sheyrll, what happened to you? And it's amazing what you get from a client when they say, when you ask them what happened to you. Sheyrll, I want to encourage people before we start judging other people. So even if you see a woman that's just always angry and irritable, and it would be nice for somebody to just sit with her and said, hey, Sheyrll, what happened to you? And when you ask that, wait, wait for a response and show empathy. And don't be asking a lot of questions. If somebody come to you and they open up, don't start asking them, so you never know, so why you never, don't do that, because you're just now telling the person that they did something wrong. Just listen. Just listen. Give them an opportunity to just express what they're feeling.
Yeah, excellent point, and just so necessary, as I have mentioned before, to talk about this. And I love that you also emphasize the importance of, normalizing being able to talk about deep things like this. So it's not just the individual that is healing, it's the whole world, it's the whole community that is healing. Now, can people fully heal from childhood trauma, or is it more about learning to live with, and to integrate those experiences?
People can heal. I mean, people can heal. Will you forget? You won't. You won't forget. But people can totally heal. And once you desire something strong enough, you will get it. Because remember, the role of the subconscious mind is to give you what you constantly put energy to. Um, is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to happen overnight? No. And this is why it takes a community effort. So, for example, Sheyrll, let's say a man is in a relationship with a woman who was molested as a child. Now, this might be a woman who is not romantic or pull away from intimacy, probably don't really like sex, that sort of thing. While she is going through her healing process, we also need him to reassure and to reinforce what she's going through. So instead of, oh, I'm always having to beg sex, or it's babe, I understand what you have gone through, and I'm here when you're ready. Believe you me, I mean, I don't want to make the viewers or the listeners sad, but there's some stories out there that are just horrific. Just Sunday, May 11th, in Jamaica, the body of a 9-year-old girl was found naked and just battered. It turns out the man raped her and then killed her. That mother got the news on Mother's Day. Many people may be asking, so she didn't see the man with her child? So how should it? Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions, but can you stop for a moment and put yourself in that mother's shoe? On Mother's Day, well, any other day, but worse, on Mother's Day, you get the news that the child that went missing, the body is found. Just think about that. Last week I was on a radio station, Freedom Radio Trinidad and Tobago. We were talking about a 12-year-old in Trinidad who was 7 months pregnant. 7 months pregnant. Right now, speculation is that the stepfather might be the father. There's so much happening out there right now. And this is why we need to show empathy, we need to show care, and fighting ACEs has to now become a community project. It cannot be an individual. But to answer this question, Sheyrll, a person can truly heal. It takes time and it takes a lot of love and support. But until you get to that place of self actualization, what therapy does, it helps you to cope while you are going through your healing process, right? Some in therapy, we have what's called DBT, right? Dialectical behavioral therapy. And that's something that I use when I'm dealing with complex trauma. And what it is, whereas a lot of persons are familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where you try to modify ill behaviors. Now, with DBT, it's two worlds coexisting. Yes, this happened to me, but I am still going on. So how do we now move on knowing that this happened to me, right? So we're working with the two worlds. We're not just ignoring and trying to push away and push on the, as if this never happened. But yes, this happened to me, but this does not have to define who I am. Let me do the necessary work. We can't do it alone. We need each other.
Yes,
The
powerful.
book, the book, the book. Let me just give you the name of the because the book I mentioned earlier, What Happened to You. The author is Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. Anybody, anybody who have gone through trauma, if you're not at the place yet where you want to speak with a therapist or speak with a pastor or anyone, this is a great tool. I definitely recommend this. And for persons who don't want to read, it's also available on Audible. So you can just listen to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll make sure that I put that in our show notes. And, believe it or not, you pretty much wrapped up the rest of the questions that I have here for us because one of my, question was going to be for parents who experience childhood trauma themselves. What are some of the ways that they can avoid passing that pain down to their children? I believe that you answered that as well as how do we now raise emotionally healthy kids in a world that doesn't always value mental health? And again, you cover that as well. Any final notes and those that you would want to add? How does the parents who 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 experience it, how do they stop it and not pass it on to generation? And how can we also create healthy children?
Yeah, well, you can't give what you don't have. And this is why self love and self worth and working on yourself is most important. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with apologizing to your children because remember that trauma is not just sexual trauma. We talk about sexual trauma a lot, but it's not just that. It's emotional. It's the mother always calling the child a name and putting the child down. There's so much to it. So there's nothing wrong with apologizing to that child and you say, I've done so and so, and I'm sorry. I have experienced some things in my life. I am getting the necessary help now so that I can be a better mother to you. I guarantee you, your child is never going to stop loving you just for that. All right. So be patient with yourself and remember that it's okay not to be okay all the time.
Yeah, awesome. So with that, we also want to share tell us a little bit about you. Of course, I'm always interested in knowing about your banner behind you as well. So talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about what you do and how we can reach you, and also your organizations that you're a part of?
Absolutely. And then after that, I'll give you some statistics because I think that's so important for the viewers and the listeners. So the banner behind me is my Mental Foundation for Men, and we thrive on three pillars: leadership, mental wellness, and financial literacy. And ACEs affect women, but let me tell you something. At least most women will speak up. ACEs affect so many men, and our men have been socialized to not speak. And this is why I'm in the space of men to help them with their own issues also. As a matter of fact, I'm having the first 1 day retreat, wellness retreat on my property. And we're not doing it exclusively for men. Eventually it will be, but for now, it's male and female, and it's just a day off workout. We have a trainer come in. We're going to be doing a mental health workshop just to give people an opportunity to speak, because some persons may not want to come one on one and talk, but if it's in a group setting and they recognize that other persons have gone through what you have gone through, are going through what you're going through, they may be able to speak up. And so I'm very excited about that. Also, May 31st, we're having a free webinar, and the flyer is posted on our social media, Mental24. And that is for empowering church leaders, mostly church leaders, and it's how to navigate mental health in ministry. A lot of times people are walking around with depression and anxiety, and we want to cast the devil out of them. And it's understanding the difference, and understanding that people in our churches also suffer from mental health, illnesses, and so we need to pay keen attention to that. So those are some of the activities that we have coming up. Persons can always check out the website, mental2024.com. We have a donate button because, as you know, the work takes money. So, we're always craving persons to support as best as you can. So you can just go on the website and click the link that says donate. And if you need therapy, if you need to work through yourself or situations that are going on, then you could book a session with me, dawnmarietherapy.com. And of course, the sessions are virtual. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. I will adjust my time, to suit you. But let us come together so that you can get the necessary help that you need. And above all, do not suffer in silence. You don't have to suffer in silence. So with that, I want to share some of the prevalence statistics for ACEs. So right now, and I got this from the Center for Disease Control in America, 22% of people have experienced at least one ACE. 13% have experienced two ACEs. 9% have experienced three ACEs. Listen to this. 16% have had four or more ACEs. 61% of adults have had at least one ACE, and 16% have had more than four. So that's globally. I want to talk about Jamaica. And this report was done by UNICEF for Jamaica. So UNICEF research indicates that 82% of children aged 10 to 17 experience at least one ACE. And here's a breakdown. Neglect, 9% of children. Emotional abuse, 71%. So when we feel like, oh, the boy them need to grow tough, and we tell them, say them ugly and them a dog, and we need to stop it. We need to stop it because words have power. Okay, words have power. Let us speak to our children gentle and tell them nice things. You're beautiful, you're strong, you're courageous, you're smart, you can do this, you got this. All right, versus telling them all the other negative things. So 71% have been emotionally abused, 46% have been physically abused, and 29% have been sexually abused. Now, if that is not enough for us to be alarmed and for us to continue to raise our voices, then I don't know what else. And so again, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And if you're unsure, you can even do a free test online. I'm sure you can just type in ACEs and you can do a free test to see where you line up. But here's my plea. If you experience two or more ACEs, speak with a therapist.
Yes, awesome. Totally agree. And I actually found the research that you can do, the survey, so I will leave that in the description below as well for our listeners and viewers. So make sure that you take a look at the show notes. It's going to be loaded with plenty resources for you, as well as mentions regarding our special guest today. So, Dawn, before we wrap this up, that's pretty much it. We appreciate your time so much. Any final words, any final nuggets you want to leave with us before we announce next week's topic and special guest?
Um, I just want to say to the person out there who have suffered from ACEs, it's not your fault. So,
Awesome. Awesome, guys. Well, that is the information that we wanted to share with you today on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if this information resonates with you, which I have no doubt that it does, then be sure to share it with a friend who needs to hear that healing is possible as well, right? Also, to let them know that help is available. Help is available. So, make sure that you're also subscribing to the podcast, because next week we actually have a very important topic as we continue to service, Mental Health Awareness Month, which is this month, the month of May. We will be talking about why men suffer in silence. And not only will us have our licensed psychologist here with us, but we will have an additional licensed, he's actually a psychotherapist that will be joining us next week. So stay tuned. And until then, bye for now. Thank you, Dawn. Bye so much. Take care.
bye, guys.